Right is right, even if everyone is against it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it. Avoid popularity, it has many snares, and no real benefit. Time is what we want most, but what we use worst. Only trust thyself, and another shall not betray thee. The jealous are troublesome to others, but a torment to themselves. Much reading is an oppression of the mind, and extinguishes the natural candle, which is the reason of so many senseless scholars in the world. Love is the hardest lesson in Christianity, but, for that reason, it should be most our care to learn it. Speak properly, and in as few words as you can, but always plainly, for the end of speech is not ostentation, but to be understood. A true friend freely advises justly, assists readily, adventures boldly, takes all patiently, defends courageously, and continues a friend unchangeably. True godliness does not turn men out of the world, but enables them to live better in it and excites their endeavors to mend it. In marriage do thou be wise, prefer the person before money, virtue before beauty, the mind before the body, then thou hast a wife, a friend, a companion, a second self. Passion is the mob of the man, that commits a riot upon his reason. Sense shines with a double luster when it is set in humility. An able yet humble man is a jewel worth a kingdom. Men must be governed by God or they will be ruled by tyrants. True silence is the rest of the mind, and is to the spirit what sleep is to the body, nourishment and refreshment. Kings in this world should imitate God, their mercy should be above their works. Nothing does reason more right, than the coolness of those that offer it, for truth often suffers more by the heat of its defenders, than from the arguments of its opposers. For death is no more than a turning of us over from time to eternity. Justice is the insurance which we have on our lives and property. Obedience is the premium which we pay for it. Love grows. Lust wastes by enjoyment, and the reason is, that one springs from an union of souls, and the other from an union of sense. We are apt to love praise, but not deserve it. But if we would deserve it, we must love virtue more than that. To be like Christ is to be a Christian. Humility and knowledge in poor clothes excel pride and ignorance in costly attire. Passion is a sort of fever in the mind, which ever leaves us weaker than it found us. Let the people think they govern and they will be governed. Truth often suffers more by the heat of its defenders than the arguments of its opposers. They have a right to censure that have a heart to help. Knowledge is the treasure of a wise man. Between a man and his wife nothing ought to rule but love. Authority is for children and servants, yet not without sweetness. Less judgment than wit is more sail than ballast. The tallest trees are most in the power of the winds, and ambitious men of the blasts of fortune. Some are so very studious of learning what was done by the ancients that they know not how to live with the moderns. O Lord, help me not to despise or oppose what I do not understand. He that does good for good's sake seeks neither paradise nor reward, but he is sure of both in the end. A good end cannot sanctify evil means, nor must we ever do evil, that good may come of it. Force may make hypocrites, but it can never make converts. He who is taught to live upon little owes more to his father's wisdom than he who has a great deal left him does to his father's care. Force may subdue, but love gains, and he that forgives first wins the laurel. Men are generally more careful of the breed of their horses and dogs than of their children. He that lives to live forever, never fears dying. It would be far better to be of no church than to be bitter of any. To be a man's own fool is bad enough, but the vain man is everybody's. If thou wouldst conquer thy weakness, thou must never gratify it. Sexes make no difference, since in souls there is none, and they are the subjects of friendship. Never marry but for love, but see that thou lovest what is lovely. Friendship is an union of spirits, a marriage of hearts, and the bond thereof virtue. Have wholesome, but not costly food, and be rather cleanly than dainty in ordering it. Have a care, therefore, where there is more sail than ballast. Friendship is the union of spirits, a marriage of hearts, and the bond thereof virtue. Patience and diligence, like faith, remove mountains. It is a profitable wisdom to know when we have done enough, much time and pains are spared, in not flattering ourselves against probabilities. Those who would mend the world must first mend themselves. Truth often suffers more by the heat of its defenders than from the arguments of its opposers. To do evil that good may come of it is for bunglers in politics as well as mortals. Drunkenness spoils health, dismounts the mind, and unmans man. It reveals secrets, is quarrelsome, lascivious, impudent, dangerous, and mad. Equivocation is halfway to lying, and lying the whole way to hell. Seek not to be rich, but happy. The one lies in bags, the other in content, which wealth can never give. A private life is to be preferred, the honor and gain of public posts, bearing no proportion with the comfort of it. A wise man makes what he learns his own, the other shows he is but a copy or a collection at most. As love ought to bring them together, so it is the best way to keep them well together. Eat therefore to live, and do not live to eat. Not to be provoked is best, but if moved, never correct till the fume is spent, for every stroke our fury strikes is sure to hit ourselves at last. Never play cards with a man called Doc. Never eat at a place called Mom's. Never sleep with a woman whose troubles are worse than your own. It were better to be of no church, than to be bitter for any. In fine, he that is drunk is not a man, because he is so long void of reason, that distinguishes a man from a beast. The truest end of life is to know that life never ends. The receipts of cookery are swelled to a volume, but a good stomach excels them all. Men not living to what they know, cannot blame God, that they know no more. Drunkenness spoils health, dismounts the mind, and unmans the man. Never give out while there is hope, but hope not beyond reason, for that shows more desire than judgment. That all persons living in this province, who confess and acknowledge the one Almighty and Eternal God, to be the Creator, Upholder, and Ruler of the world, and that hold themselves obliged in conscience to live peaceably and justly in civil society, shall, in no ways, be molested or prejudiced for their religious persuasion, or practice, in matters of faith and worship, nor shall they be compelled, at any time, to frequent or maintain any religious worship, place or ministry whatever. Man, being made reasonable, and so a thinking creature, there is nothing more worthy of his being than the right direction and employment of his thoughts, since upon this depends both his usefulness to the public, and his own present and future benefit in all respects. It is admirable to consider how many millions of people come into, and go out of the world, ignorant of themselves and of the world they have lived in. Unless virtue guide us, our choice must be wrong. If men be good, government cannot be bad. We are apt to be very pert at censuring others, where we will not endure advice. A man in business must put up many affronts if he loves his own quiet. All excess is ill, but drunkenness is of the worst sort. It spoils health, dismounts the mind, and unmans men. It reveals secrets, is quarrelsome, lascivious, impudent, dangerous and mad. In fine, he that is drunk is not a man, because he is so long void of reason, that distinguishes a man from a beast. You are now fixed at the mercy of no governor that comes to make his fortune great. You shall be governed by laws of your own making and live a free, and if you will, a sober and industrious life. I shall not usurp the right of any, or oppress his person. God has furnished me with a better resolution and has given me his grace to keep it. Knowledge is the treasure, but judgment is the treasurer of the one who is wise. A garden, an laboratory, a work, house, improvements, and breeding, are pleasant and profitable diversions to the idle and ingenious, for here they miss ill company, and converse with nature and art, whose variety are equally grateful and instructing, and preserve a good constitution of body and mind. Never marry but for love, but see that thou lovest what is lovely. Avoid flatterers, for they are thieves in disguise. Friendship is the next pleasure we may hope for, and where we find it not at home, or have no home to find it in, we may seek it abroad. It is an union of spirits, a marriage of hearts, and the bond thereof virtue. Haste makes work which caution prevents. Experience is a safe guide. To do evil that good may come of it is for bunglers in politics as well as morals. That which the people called Quakers lay down as a main fundamental in religion is this, that God, through Christ, hath placed a principle in every man, to inform him of his duty, and to enable him to do it, and that those that live up to this principle are the people of God, and those that live in disobedience to it are not God's people, whatever name they may bear, or profession they may make of religion. This is their ancient, first, and standing testimony, with this they began, and this they bore, and do bear to the world. Hasty resolutions are of the nature of vows, and to be equally avoided. To hazard much to get much has more of avarice than wisdom. Where charity keeps pace with gain, industry is blessed. Charity is a universal remedy against discord, and an holy cement for mankind. Next to God, thy parents. He that lives to forever, never fears dying. Not to be provoked is best, but if moved, never correct till the fume is spent, for every stroke our fury strikes, is sure to hit ourselves at last. Governments, like clocks, go from the motion men give them, and as governments are made and moved by men, so by them they are ruined too. Wherefore governments rather depend upon men, than men upon governments. Let men be good, and the government cannot be bad; if it be ill, they will cure it. But if men be bad, let the government be never so good, they will endeavor to warp and spoil it to their turn. It is impossible that any people of government should ever prosper, where men render not unto God that which is God's, as well as to Caesar that which is Caesar's. Neither despise nor oppose what thou dost not understand. Where thou art obliged to speak, be sure speak the truth, for equivocation is halfway to lying, as lying, the whole way to hell. True godliness doesn't turn men out of the world, but enables them to live better in it, and excites their endeavors to mend it. We have nothing that we can call our own, no, not ourselves, for we are all but tenants, and at will, too, of the great Lord of ourselves, and the rest of this great farm, the world that we live upon. It would go a long way to caution and direct people in their use of the world that they would better studied and known in the creation of it. For how could man find the confidence to abuse it, while they should see the great Creator stare them in the face, in all and every part thereof? If thou wouldn't conquer thy weakness, thou must not gratify it. Death cannot kill what never dies. We are too apt to love praise, but not to deserve it. Religion itself is nothing else but love to God and man. He that lives in love lives in God, says the beloved disciple, and to be sure a man can live nowhere better. Never chide with anger, but instruction. It is profitable wisdom to know when we have done enough. Much time and pains are spared in not flattering ourselves against probabilities. God sends us the poor to try us. And he that refuses them a little out of the great deal that God has given lays up poverty in store for his own posterity. No people can be truly happy, if abridged of the freedom of their consciences. The unspoken word never defeats one. What one does not say does not have to be explained. The remedy often proves worse than the disease. No religion is better than an unnatural one. Disappointments that aren't a result of our own foolishness are a testing of our faith or a correction from heaven, and it is our own fault if these disappointments don't work for our own good. We need to stop arguing about Christ and start living like Christ. He who gives to the poor, lends to the Lord. But it may be said, not improperly, the Lord lends to us to give to the poor. Though our Saviour's passion is over, his compassion is not. Never despise what you don't understand. Eat, to live, and do not live to eat. Levity of behavior, always a weakness, is far more unbecoming in a woman than a man. Let us try what love will do. I know no religion that destroys courtesy, civility, and kindness. If thou rise with an appetite, thou art sure never to sit down without one. There can be no friendship where there is no freedom. A good end sanctify evil means, not must we ever do evil, that good might come of it. We are ready to retaliate, rather than forgive or gain by love and information. Force may subdue, but love gains. And one that forgives first wins the laurel. The wisdom of nations lies in their proverbs, which are brief and pithy. I have sometimes thought that people are, in a sort, happy, that nothing can put out of countenance with themselves, though they neither have nor merit other people's. If thou wouldst conquer thy weakness, thou must never gratify it. No man is compelled to evil, his consent only makes it his. It is no sin to be tempted, but to be overcome. Content not thyself that thou art virtuous in the general, for one link being wanting, the chain is defective. Naked truth needs no shift. The usefulest truths are plainest, and while we keep to them, our differences cannot rise high. Were the superfluities of a nation valued, and made a perpetual tax or benevolence, there would be more almshouses than poor, schools than scholars, and enough to spare for government besides. It is the difference betwixt lust and love that this is fixed, that volatile. Love grows, lust wastes by enjoyment. The country is both the philosopher's garden and his library, in which he reads and contemplates the power, wisdom, and goodness of God. It is certain that the most natural and human government is that of consent, for that binds freely. When men hold their liberty by true obedience to rules of their own making. Always remember to bound thy thoughts to the present occasion. I shall pass through life but once. Let me show kindness now, as I shall not pass this way again. It is a cruel folly to offer up to ostentation so many lives of creatures, as to make up the state of our treats. To be innocent is to be not guilty, but to be virtuous is to overcome our evil inclinations. That plenty should produce either covetousness or prodigality is a perversion of providence, and yet the generality of men are the worse for their riches. Neither great nor good things were ever attained without loss and hardships. Those that would reap and not labor, must faint with the wind, and perish in disappointments. But an hair of my head shall not fall, without the providence of my Father that is over all. Friendship is the union of spirits. 'Tis no sin to be tempted, but to be overcome. Let us, then, try what love will do, for if people once see we love them, we should soon find that they would not harm us. Force may subdue, but love gains, and they who forgive first, win the laurel. By liberty of conscience, we understand not only a mere liberty of the mind, in believing or disbelieving this or that principle or doctrine, but the exercise of ourselves in a visible way of worship, upon our believing it to be indispensably required at our hands, that if we neglect it for fear of favor of any mortal man, we sin and incur divine wrath. Clear therefore thy head, and rally, and manage thy thoughts rightly, and thou wilt save time, and see and do thy business well, for thy judgment will be distinct, thy mind free, and the faculties strong and regular. Men being born with a title to perfect freedom and uncontrolled enjoyment of all the rights and privileges of the law of nature, no one can be put out of his estate and subjected to the political view of another, without his consent. There is nothing of which we are apt to be so lavish as of time, and about which we ought to be more solicitous, since without it we can do nothing in this world. Truth never lost ground by inquiry. The country life is to be preferred, for there we see the works of God, but in cities little else but the works of men, and the one makes a better subject for contemplation than the other. Perfect love casteth out fear. It is a coal from God's altar must kindle our fire, and without fire, true fire, no acceptable sacrifice. God is better served in resisting a temptation to evil than in many formal prayers. This is the comfort of friends, that though they may be said to die, yet their friendship and society are, in the best sense, ever present, because immortal. Religion is the fear of God, and its demonstration good works, and faith is the root of both, for without faith we cannot please God, nor can we fear what we do not believe. 5 things are requisite to a good officer: ability, clean hands, dispatch, patience, and impartiality. Frugality is good if liberality be joined with it. The first is leaving off superfluous expenses, the last is bestowing them to the benefit of others that need. The first without the last begets covetousness, the last without the first begets prodigality. Is it reasonable to take it ill, that anybody desires of us that which is their own? All we have is the Almighty's, and shall not God have His own when He calls for it? Method goes far to prevent trouble in business, for it makes the task easy, hinders confusion, saves abundance of time, and instructs those that have business depending, both what to do and what to hope. A vain man is a nauseous creature. He is so full of himself that he has no room for anything else, be it never so good or deserving. Interest has the security, though not the virtue of a principle. As the world goes, it is the surest side, for men daily leave both relations and religion to follow it. Cunning to wise, is as an ape to a man. What man in his right mind would conspire his own hurt? Men are beside themselves when they transgress against their convictions. They that censure, should practice. Or else let them have the first stone, and the last too. Choose thy clothes by thine own eyes, not another's. The only fountain in the wilderness of life, where man drinks of water totally unmixed with bitterness, is that which gushes for him in the calm and shady recess of domestic life. False dealing travels a short road, and surely detected. They that soar too high, often fall hard. Silence is wisdom where speaking is folly. She is but half a wife that is not, nor is capable of being, a friend. The smaller the drink, the clearer the head, and the cooler the blood. They that marry for money cannot have the true satisfaction of marriage, the requisite means being wanting. It is the amends of a short and troublesome life, that doing good and suffering ill entitles man to a longer and better. Excess in apparel is another costly folly. The very trimming of the vain world would clothe all the naked ones. Show is not substance, realities govern wise men. A wise neuter joins with neither, but uses both as his honest interest leads him. For disappointments, that come not by our own folly, they are the trials or corrections of heaven, and it is our own fault, if they prove not our advantage. Nothing shows our weakness more than to be so sharp-sighted at spying other men's faults, and so purblind about our own. He that lives in love lives in God. 'Tis the glory of a man to vail to truth, as it is the mark of a good nature to be easily entreated. Where judgment has wit to express it, there's the best orator. Wit gives an edge to sense, and recommends it extremely. Inquire often, but judge rarely, and thou wilt not often be mistaken. The usefulest truths are the plainest. Government seems to me to be a part of religion itself, a thing sacred in its institutions and ends. Oppression makes a poor country. Nor must we always be neutral where our neighbors are concerned, for though meddling is a fault, helping is a duty. Love grows, lust wastes by enjoyment. There is a troublesome humor some men have, that if they may not lead, they will not follow, but had rather a thing were never done, than not done their own way, though other ways very desirable. Death cannot kill that which does not die. Love labor, for if thou dost not want it for food, thou mayest for physique. It is wholesome for the body, and good for the mind. It prevents the fruits of idleness, which many times come of nothing to do, and leads many to do what is worse than nothing. Justice is justly represented blind, because she sees no difference in the parties concerned. She has but one scale and weight, for rich and poor, great and small. Above all things endeavor to breed them up the love of virtue, and that holy plain way of it which we have lived in, that the world in no part of it get into my family. I had rather they were homely than finely bred as to outward behavior, yet I love sweetness mixed with gravity, and cheerfulness tempered with sobriety. A jealous man only sees his own spectrum when he looks upon other men, and gives his character in theirs. A man, like a watch, is to be valued for his manner of going. Some men do as much begrudge others a good name, as they want one themselves, and perhaps that is the reason of it. We are too careless of posterity, not considering that as they are, so the next generation will be. Every stroke our fury strikes is sure to hit ourselves at last. The public must and will be served. Make few resolutions, but keep them strictly. Though, death be a dark passage, it leads to immortality, and that is recompense enough for suffering of it. And yet faith lights us, even through the grave, and this is the comfort of the good, and the grave cannot hold them, and they live as they die. For death is no more than a turning of us over from time to eternity. Wherefore, brethren, let us be careful neither to outgo our guide, nor yet loiter behind him, since he that makes haste may miss his way, and he that stays behind lose his guide. Never esteem people, including yourself, more because they have money, nor think less of anyone, including yourself, because they lack it. Virtue is the only just reason for respecting anyone, lack of virtue the only reason for holding anyone in low regard. The way, like the cross, is spiritual, that is an inward submission of the soul to the will of God, as it is manifested by the light of Christ in the consciences of men, though it be contrary to their own inclinations. The best recreation is to do good. Anything less than full justice is cruelty. Many able gardeners and husbandmen are yet ignorant of the reason of their calling, as most artificers are of the reason of their own rules that govern their excellent workmanship. But a naturalist and mechanic of this sort is master of the reason of both, and might be of the practice too, if his industry kept pace with his speculation. which were every commendable, and without which he cannot be said to be a complete naturalist or mechanic. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good therefore that I can do, let me do it now. Peace can only be secured by justice, never by force of arms. If thou wouldst be happy, bring thy mind to thy condition, and have an indifferency for more than what is sufficient. We have a call to do good, as often as we have the power and occasion. Where example keeps pace with authority, power hardly fails to be obeyed. If thy debtor be honest and capable, thou hast thy money again, if not with increase, with praise. If he prove insolvent, don't ruin him to get that which it will not ruin thee to lose, for thou art but a steward. But make not more business necessary than is so, and rather lessen than augment work for thyself. It is not only a troublesome but slavish to be nice, fastidious. Be sure that religion cannot be right that a man is the worse for having. The wisdom of nations lies in their proverbs, which are brief and pithy. Collect and learn them, they are notable measures of directions for human life. You have much in little, they save time in speaking, and upon occasion may be the fullest and safest answer. To have religion upon authority, and not upon conviction, is like a finger watch, to be set forwards or backwards, as he pleases that has it in keeping. Less judgment than wit is more sail than ballast. Yet it must be confessed that wit given an edge to sense, and recommends it extremely. It were endless to dispute upon everything that is disputable. Covetousness is the greatest of monsters, as well as the root of all evil. If we are but sure the end is right, we are too apt to gallop over all bounds to compass it, not considering the lawful ends may be very unlawfully attained. A private life is to be preferred, the honor and gain of public posts, bearing no proportion with the comfort of it. To be furious in religion is to be irreligiously religious. Nor yet be overeager in pursuit of anything, for the mercurial too often happen to leave judgment behind them, and sometimes make work for repentance. Religion is nothing else but love of God and man. Death then, being the way and condition of life, we cannot love to live if we cannot bear to die. Sense shines with double luster when set in humility. Be rather bountiful than expensive. If a civil word or two will render a man happy, he must be a wretch indeed who will not tell them to him. Love is indeed heaven upon earth, since heaven above would not bow heaven without it, for where there is not love, there is fear, but perfect love casteth out fear. It is safer to learn than teach, and who conceals his opinion has nothing to answer for. He that has more knowledge than judgment, is made for another man's use more than his own. Dislike what deserves it, but never hate, for that is of the nature of malice, which is almost ever to persons, not things, and is one of the blackest qualities sin begets in the soul. Death is only a horizon, and a horizon is only the limit of your sight. Open your eyes to see more clearly. For as men in battle are continually in the way of shot, so we, in this world, are ever within the reach of temptation. The truest end of life is to know the life that never ends. It were happy if we studied nature more in natural things, and acted according to nature, whose rules are few, plain, and most reasonable. Do good with what thou hast, or it will do thee no good. Rarely promise, but, if lawful, constantly perform. Children, fear God, that is to say, have an holy awe upon your minds to avoid that which is evil, and a strict care to embrace and do that which is good. The humble, meek, merciful, and just are everywhere of one religion, and when death has taken off the mask they will know one another, though the diverse liveries they wear here make them strangers. If thou thinkest twice before thou speakest once, thou wilt speak twice the better for it. People are more afraid of the laws of man than of God, because their punishment seems to be nearest. If you protect a man from folly, you will soon have a nation of fools. It is a severe rebuke upon us, that God makes us so many allowances, and we make so few to our neighbor. If we would mend the world, we should mend ourselves, and teach our children to be, not what we are, but what they should be. Death is but crossing the world, as friends do the seas, they live in one another still. We are told truly that meekness and modesty are the rich and charming garments of the soul. The less showy our outward attire is, the more distinctly and brilliantly does the beauty of these inner garments shine. You are Englishmen, mind your privileges, give not away your right. There is a truth and beauty in rhetoric, but it oftener serves ill turns than good ones. Choose a friend as thou dost a wife, till death separate you. Do what good thou canst unknown, and be not vain of what ought rather to be felt than seen. For we put the power in the people. For though death be a dark passage, it leads to immortality, and that is recompense enough for suffering of it. For nothing reaches the heart but what is from the heart, or pierces the conscience but what comes from a living conscience. My prison shall be my grave before I will budge a jot, for I owe my conscience to no mortal man. Love labor, for if thou dost not want it for food, thou mayest for physic. It is wholesome for thy body and good for thy mind. Let us see what love can do. In the rush and noise of life, as you have intervals, step home within yourselves and be still. Wait upon God, and feel His good presence. This will carry you evenly through your day's business. Did we believe a final reckoning and judgment, or did we think enough of what we do believe, we would allow more love in religion than we do, since religion itself is nothing else but love to God and man. Love is indeed heaven upon earth, since heaven above would not be heaven without it, for where there is not love, there is fear, but perfect love casts out fear. Love is above all, and when it prevails in us all, we shall all be lovely, and in love with God and one with another. It is wise not to seek a secret, and honest not to reveal one. In all debates, let truth be thy aim, not victory, or an unjust interest. No pain, no palm, no thorns, no throne, no gall, no glory, no cross, no crown. There can be no friendship where there is no freedom. Friendship loves a free air, and will not be fenced up in straight and narrow enclosures. No man is fit to command another that cannot command himself. Inquiry is human, blind obedience brutal. Truth never loses by the one but often suffers by the other. We are inclined to call things by the wrong names. We call prosperity happiness, and adversity misery, even though adversity is the school of wisdom and often the way to eternal happiness. Between a man and his wife nothing ought to rule but love. Believe nothing against another but on good authority, and never report what may hurt another, unless it be a greater hurt to some other to conceal it. If thou wouldst rule well, thou must rule for God, and to do that, thou must be ruled by Him. Those who will not be governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. They that love beyond the world cannot be separated by it. Death cannot kill what never dies. If it be an evil to judge rashly or untruly any single man, how much a greater sin it is to condemn a whole people. The adventure of the Christian life begins when we dare to do what we would never tackle without Christ. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. I expect to pass through life but once. If therefore there be any kindness I can show, or any good thing I can do to any fellow being, let me do it now, and not defer or neglect it. as I shall not pass this way again. The secret of happiness is to count your blessings while others are adding up their troubles.